Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about the different storage offerings that are provided in the Google Cloud Console. So let's get started. The most commonly used storage platform in GCP is the cloud storage. So this is actually an object store that is offered in GCP. So there is actually no capacity which is required to be managed when you are using the cloud storage platform. The objects are nothing but the files that you are actually storing, files or let's say it can be any of the data that you are actually storing on the cloud storage. Those are actually referred as objects, and they have a unique key which is in the form of URLs in the cloud storage platform. So basically, like, you can access all these files or the data that you are actually storing on cloud storage in the form of URLs. Now, remember that when you are accessing it in the form of URLs, these are all encrypted over HTTPS protocol. That means these are all secured. Now, objects or the files or the data that you're storing in the cloud storage are immutable. What it means is that, like, let's say if you have a file called a.txt which is stored in the cloud storage. Now, let's say if you want to overwrite that file, or you have made some modification, now you want to save that file again. So what cloud storage does is that, like, it will deprecate the old version of that file and store a new version of a.txt in the same location. Okay, what it actually means is that, like, you are not updating a file or doing anything. You are actually updating the version of that file. So the complete file is stored back on the cloud storage in the form of a new version. Okay. Now, GCP Cloud Storage Platform also offers you the lifecycle management policies. What that means is that, like, you can actually manage the tier, a hot or a cold tier, based on what is the frequency of access of that particular file or the age of that particular file. Okay, so we'll cover the lifecycle management policy in depth when we are actually covering in the cloud storage platform. The next storage offering that we are going to discuss is the Cloud Bigtable. So Cloud Bigtable is nothing but a fully managed NoSQL offering in GCP. So it's actually a NoSQL database that you are actually launching in the GCP console. It can scale up to billions of rows and thousands of columns seamlessly. Okay. And apart from that, like, you get a very high throughput for read write with a very low latency. And apart from that, like, it also supports the open source API, same as HBase. So any user who is actually comfortable using HBase should feel comfortable in Cloud Bigtable as well. And apart from that, since you're storing a lot of data here, the data is actually encrypted in rest and in flight mode as well. So your data is actually secure. The next storage offering that we are going to discuss is the Cloud Data Store. This is again one more NoSQL DB offered in GCP. The difference between Cloud Data Store and Cloud Bigtable is that when you are dealing with petabytes of data, Bigtable is the most preferred approach, and when you are dealing with terabytes of data, Cloud Data Store is actually more preferred. Now, Bigtable has a support for wider columns. Apart from that, in Cloud Data Store, you can actually have transactions on each of the update operation or the modify operations. Now, Cloud Data Store is more suitable when you are actually dealing with backups. The next storage offering that we are going to discuss is the Google Cloud SQL. So it's a managed RDBMS which is actually provided by the GCP. So it offers MySQL and PostgreSQL database. So you do have an option if you want to go with MySQL RDBMS database, or if you want to go with the PostgreSQL DB. Okay. The advantage of using this RDBMS service provided from GCP is that, like, you don't have to manage the servers, you only have to manage the data. The servers management is completely responsible on the Google Cloud. Now, what server management does Google Cloud does is that, like, as in when your data comes in, it actually determines whether a vertical scaling is required or a horizontal scaling is required. It is based on the read and write requests that are actually triggered from the user standpoint. Apart from that, the data that you're actually storing on the Google Cloud SQL service, it is automatically backed up. So in case of a disaster recovery situation, you do have an option to actually go ahead and recover your data. The next service that we are going to discuss is the Google Cloud Spanner. Now, it is again one more RDBMS service that is actually provided on the GCP console, but the only difference between this and the Google Cloud SQL service is that, like, let's say if you want to deal with petabytes of data, the more preferred approach is to go ahead and use the Google Cloud Spanner. If your data is in the order of terabytes, then you can actually leverage the Google Cloud SQL platform. Now, the Google Cloud Spanner has the same flexibility and the same features that are actually there in the Google Cloud SQL, okay, with a strong global consistency. Means the data can be actually stored in the different geographical regions, and there is a strong consistency between the data during the time of retrieval. Now, how do we compare all of these storage services from each other? You can actually pause this video, take a screenshot of this for later reference. So we are discussing here the two NoSQL DBs which are offered, the Cloud Data Store and the Bigtable. These are both the NoSQL offerings. So basically, when you are using petabytes of data, Bigtable is actually more preferred, and when you are dealing with terabytes of data, the Cloud Data Store is actually more preferred. Now, remember that transactions are actually supported in Cloud Data Store. When you are dealing with any of the object storage, this is just an so we have the cloud storage model, which is an object store. Okay. Now, when it comes to RDBMS, we have two options: the Cloud SQL and the Cloud Spanner. So when you are dealing with petabytes of data, the Cloud Spanner is actually more preferred. When you're using terabytes of data, the Cloud SQL service is actually more preferred. Now, there is one more storage offering called the Google BigQuery, which is actually handled in the big data storage. So we'll cover this in depth when we are actually covering the GCP big data section. Okay, but just remember that for big data offering, we have the Google Cloud BigQuery service as well. We can also compare the storage options based on the use cases that we have. Now, let's say if you are dealing with backups or anything in terms of NoSQL, the Cloud Data Store is actually more suitable. Let's say if you have a very let's say a very high events that are actually running on a NoSQL DB, and you have very heavy read-write operations, or it's a very intensive operation, then Bigtable is actually the more preferred language. Apart from that, let's say if you are dealing only with object store, let's say if you have unstructured or structured data, which can be images, videos, large files, large backup files, some of the backup DBs that you want to actually store, then you can actually go ahead with the cloud storage option. Now, when it comes to relational storage, if it is kind of data in terabytes, then you can actually proceed with the Cloud SQL. Let's say if you want to store the user's login details, or in case if you are running a retail website, let's say if you want to just store the order details for a particular day, then Cloud SQL is actually more preferred. Now, Cloud Spanner, let's say in case if you are dealing with petabytes of data, it is actually preferred to go ahead with Cloud Spanner, since it has a high consistency. Okay, and whenever you are actually dealing with big data, the preferred thing is a BigQuery. So we'll be covering this in our big data section. But yeah, I mean, we do have BigQuery for the big data offerings in GCP. I hope you all now have a basic understanding on how different storage options are actually provided in GCP, and based on the use case you can actually go ahead and implement the storage option based on the use case that you have. Okay, now remember that the use cases that we have discussed in this video is kind of a general structure that we have used, but it all depends on the implementation and the amount of data that you are actually dealing with. So every use case is actually different, and you have to come up with the preferred storage approach based on the pricing and the amount of data that you're actually dealing with, the amount and the type of data. Okay, make sure you can you leave your comments or you leave your queries in the comment section below, and I'll actually go ahead and try to answer all of them. Thanks for watching this video.